I arrived 10 minutes late on purpose, fashionably detached, I told myself. The rooftop restaurant shimmered in gold and candlelight, with laughter bouncing off champagne glasses and curated smiles. Somewhere between the valet and the hostess stand, I reminded myself, this isn't your family. This is performance art. You're just here to observe. Then I saw it, a small table near the entrance, littered with carefully printed name tags. CEO uncles, Ivy League cousins, the whole glittery hierarchy of people I was apparently beneath. My fingers grazed my own simple white plastic. Bold black letters, Logan, the disappointment. I almost laughed, not in amusement, that dry, huffing kind of laugh you make when reality bites so hard you feel nothing. Typical. I didn't need to turn around to know who was watching Kevin, my father's second husband, wearing smug like a designer cologne. If cruelty had a scent, it'd be his cold brew and cologne aura. He was by the bar, no doubt retelling the story of how his children were thriving. Oliver in tech, Haley about to publish her second book, and me, the freelance disappointment. I didn't pick up the tag, just stared at it for a beat too long. If this had been 5 years ago, I'd have thrown it, walked out, maybe even cried in the elevator. But 5 years ago, I didn't have a spine, or my own company, or the clarity to know when something is meant to break, not fix. So I did what they never expected. I smiled. Let the show begin, I whispered under my breath and walked in like I belonged. The thing about my father is, he's mastered the art of presence without acknowledgement. You could be standing 3 feet from him and still feel invisible. A man with the charisma of a politician and the emotional bandwidth of a toaster. He stood near the center of the room, glass of aged wine in hand, laughing along with some corporate relics who wore too much money and too little soul. The skyline glittered behind them, an expensive backdrop for the kind of birthday party where everyone knows. It's less about celebration, more about status maintenance. He didn't see me at first. Then his eyes flicked past me. Pause. Rewind. His gaze returned brief, cold, like a wind that passes through you rather than around you. A ghost of a smile tugged at his lips. Not the warm kind. The kind you give a stranger who just tripped and tried to play it cool. That was our relationship in a moment. Polite dismissal dressed as civility. He turned back to his circle. The message was clear. You're not part of this narrative, Logan. You're just an unskippable ad in my success story. I headed to the bar, ignoring the glances. Not Glaire's glances. Like I was a pop quiz no one studied for. Logan, a voice like silk stretched too thin over venom. Kevin, I turned. The man looked immaculate, as always. Designer suit, gold cufflinks, haircut that probably cost more than my month's rent when I was in college. Well, look who made time for Daddy's big night, he said, voice syrupy sweet with that underlying snarl only I could hear. Kevin, I gave a half smile. Still in charge of public relations, I see. He chuckled, then leaned in just enough for his words to burn like bourbon. Hope you liked your little gift. Then, a tilt of the head eyes flicking back toward the name tag table. Bingo. I didn't flinch, didn't blink, just nodded, sipped my drink and said, "It's cute. You still think this bothers me." He arched a perfectly trimmed brow, but I was already turning away. They expected a wounded boy. They were getting a man who came prepared. I drifted past clusters of polished guests, their laughter artificial, their perfume expensive. No one looked at me long enough to start a conversation. I wasn't important enough to linger on just another face that didn't match the wallpaper of prestige. But then I saw them. The golden duo. Oliver stood near the patio railing, cocktail in hand, animatedly describing his latest crypto venture to an uncle who clearly had no idea what a blockchain was. His tailored navy blue suit matched the sapphire cufflinks glinting at his wrists. He laughed like he'd just discovered the cure to mediocrity. Beside him stood Haley, her dress a perfect blend of elegance and ambition. She clutched a first edition poetry book to her chest, like it was part of her personality, casually mentioning her upcoming TED Talk to a group of wide-eyed cousins. They were everything my father ever wanted his children to be: articulate, shiny, digestible. Their success wasn't just applauded, it was used as a weapon. I wasn't jealous. Not anymore. But I remembered what it felt like to be 13, trying to show my father a design I made for a school project, while Oliver interrupted to talk about some coding boot camp he'd joined. I remembered how Dad's eyes lit up for Oliver, the kind of light that never quite made it to me. Haley spilled red wine on the carpet once at a Christmas party. I offered to clean it up. Kevin handed me the rag without a word. My father didn't blink. Haley giggled, and that was that. Funny how some people's mistakes become charming quirks, while others' mine become character flaws. I slipped away from the crowd and stepped out onto the balcony. The city skyline stretched across the horizon, lit in amber and steel. I leaned against the railing and let the cool breeze numb my jaw. And that's when it hit me. Not a memory, but a sequence of them. I was 5, and my dad used to hold my hand tightly when we crossed the street. He'd call me his little sidekick. I was 8, and he taught me how to tie a tie for my first school recital. He said I looked sharp, just like him. I was 10, and then Kevin arrived. Everything after that blurred like a film someone had hastily fast-forwarded. Kevin didn't scream or break things. His cruelty was polished, his words always one shade short of kindness. His tone always just a little too tight. It was in the way he'd say, "Oliver, great job," and then, "Logan, maybe next time." By the time I was 11, Kevin had moved in. By 12, I was hearing phrases like "Logan's just more of an artistic type" from my father's mouth code for not a real success story. And then the errands started. "Logan, can you help Oliver with his science project?" "Logan, Haley's tired, can you take out the trash?" "Logan, don't ask so many questions. You're the older one. Be mature." I became the convenient older sibling, the helper, the default. I remembered one Friday when I waited an hour outside my middle school in the rain. My father never showed. I walked home drenched, my backpack soaked through. When I opened the door, they were all on the couch watching a movie, popcorn in hand. No one even looked guilty. "Did you forget about me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. My dad looked up, shrugged. "I was busy. You're old enough to figure it out." But apparently, Oliver and Haley never had to figure it out. They were allowed to be kids. I was expected to be the adult no one listened to. When I turned 17, I found out the college fund my mom had left me meticulously saved before she passed was gone. Just vanished. I confronted my dad. "I used it to help Haley get into school," he said, casually, like we were discussing leftovers. "That was mine," I said, my voice shaking. He looked bored. "You can apply for scholarships. You're resourceful." That was the last straw. I left the next morning with 2 duffel bags and no plan. Rented a room the size of a closet. Worked ridiculous hours at 3 part-time jobs. Ate discount noodles for months. I put myself through school with nothing but spite and student debt, and yet somehow I never called home and no one ever called me. But I survived. No, I built. I learned design, UX, web development, then freelancing, then clients, then contracts. I built something real. And yet, here I was, back at this rooftop circus, sipping a $24 cocktail under a sky of indifferent stars, still labeled the disappointment. I turned back toward the room, just in time to hear Oliver say, "Dad was so generous to help Haley pay off her loans. But honestly, I think he just supports the kids who have potential." The words landed like frostbite, but I didn't flinch. Not anymore. I wasn't going to break or argue or explain, not tonight. I smiled and walked back into the lion's den, quiet and calm. They still thought I was the version of Logan who left that house years ago. They had no idea who I'd become. The air inside was thicker than before, perfume, ambition, and unspoken competition layered on top of each other, like oversauced hors d'oeuvre. Every conversation seemed to orbit money, success, or a name worth dropping. I could hear my father's voice weaving through the crowd like a business pitch wrapped in a charm offensive. That's when I noticed it. A shift. Not in the lighting or the temperature, but in myself. There was no more weight on my chest, no expectation left to crush me. Not a single part of me still wanted his validation. And that's when I knew what I needed to do. I placed my glass gently on a high-top table near the center of the room. Then I picked up a nearby butter knife and tapped it against the rim. Clink, clink, clink. It wasn't loud, but it was just loud enough. One by one, conversations dissolved. Heads turned. Forks paused halfway to mouths. Eyes locked on me, not with warmth, but with polite confusion, just enough to feel real. I felt my father's gaze land on me across the room. Kevin's smile faded into a puzzled line. Oliver and Haley both stopped mid-sentence. I was suddenly the spotlight, the unexpected keynote speaker at a celebration I was barely invited to. Perfect. I raised my empty glass slightly, eyes scanning the room. I figured, since we're all here to celebrate the man of the hour, I'd take a moment to raise a toast. My father's shoulders dropped slightly. Maybe he thought I was finally folding, playing nice, trying to belong. I let the silence stretch one beat longer, then smiled. My father always told me that family means showing up for each other, standing together. Loyalty, above all, right? I said, glancing at him. A few nods followed. Safe territory. Some assumed I was buttering him up. They didn't see the blade beneath my tone yet. But here's something I've learned. For some people, family only works when you follow their script. The second you try to write your own story, suddenly you're not one of us anymore. The temperature in the room shifted, quietly, like a cold draft slipping in through a closed window. I continued, calm as ever. When I left this family, I told myself I wouldn't come back. But every now and then, an invitation arrives: birthday, Christmas, wedding. Just enough to keep the public image intact. I turned to Kevin, whose jaw tightened as he adjusted his sleeve. And every time I showed up, someone made sure I remembered exactly where I stood. Whether it was a backhanded comment, a cold glance, or tonight, I gestured toward the entrance, a name tag that says the disappointment. There were audible gasps. A few people turned toward the entrance to verify. My father cleared his throat, but I raised my hand slightly. Not now, Dad. I'm not finished. He froze. That was a first. I spent years trying to earn his approval, I said, my voice steady. Tried to be what this family could be proud of. But then I realized, why should I need to prove anything to people who never saw me to begin with? I took a breath, paused, let the weight of it sit on their shoulders. My so-called stepbrother and stepsister Oliver and Haley are paraded around like gold standard humans. Meanwhile, the guy who put himself through college, built a business from nothing, and showed up tonight in spite of it all, he's still labeled a mistake. Oliver frowned. Haley looked at her feet. And you, Kevin. I met his eyes, voice clipped with ice. Spent years pretending to be polite while undercutting me at every opportunity. Subtle, cruel, efficient. But don't worry tonight, you finally got your laugh. He opened his mouth to object, but I didn't give him space. So here's my toast, I said, raising my glass again. Happy birthday, Dad. Congratulations on surrounding yourself with everything you ever wanted, except the one thing you'll never have again. Me. Murmurs. Silence. A beat of disbelief stretched across the room like a held breath. And for the rest of you, thank you, I said, for making it so clear where I stand. It's been enlightening. Then I stepped forward, placed my glass on the table beside the untouched cake, and looked my father in the eye. You don't have to call me your son. Just make sure you never call me for anything again. His mouth opened, eyes glassy with a mixture of embarrassment and rage. Logan, don't do this, he said quietly, but with that old controlling undertone. Too late. I turned, walked toward the elevator with my head high and shoulders loose. Behind me, I could hear a rustle of movement, someone calling my name, a chair scraping, a voice muttering what the hell just happened. But I didn't stop, didn't turn back, not once. And as the elevator doors closed, I caught a final glimpse of Kevin's expression, something between fury and fear. It was the best view of the night. The elevator doors closed with a soft hiss, shutting out the glittering skyline, the murmuring confusion, and the suffocating pretense. For the first time all evening, I exhaled. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't breathless. I was light, like I had finally taken off a jacket I didn't realize had been soaked through for years. I stepped into the night air and walked across the valet lane toward my car. Not a luxury vehicle, not some badge of family pride, but mine. Paid off in full, built with quiet hours of work and louder moments of self-belief. I slid into the driver's seat and closed the door behind me. Silence. Not the awkward kind you feel at bad dinners, but the clean, golden kind. The kind that follows truth like an echo. I sat there, staring through the windshield at the rooftop edge, still lit with party lights. I imagined the guests scrambling to recover the tone, pretending the outburst didn't rupture something unspoken. Kevin probably trying to downplay it. My father pretending he hadn't just been called out by his own son. Oliver and Haley. Well, maybe they'd finally get it. Maybe not. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Kevin, Logan, That was immature. You owe your father an apology. Haley, seriously? What the hell was that? Oliver, real classy bro. Hope the drama was worth it. I turned the screen off. Another buzz. My father this time. I didn't open the text. Instead, I blocked the numbers one by one. Not out of rage. Not even bitterness. Out of peace. I didn't owe them a damn thing. The next morning, I woke in my apartment with no lingering dread. The sunlight streaming in felt like a reset button. No obligations. No forced performance. Just air I could finally breathe on my own terms. I brewed coffee, fed my cat, and sat by the window with my laptop. Projects to finish, clients to reply to. Life didn't pause for closure, but it sure as hell moved easier without that weight on my back. I clicked open my inbox and smiled at a message from a client I'd pitched to the week prior. Loved your proposal. Let's move forward. Contract attached. That was what I built for myself, not approval, not handouts, not borrowed pride. A few days passed, then a week. Silence. No more messages, no more guilt grenades lobbed into my day. I imagined them all stewing, my father rationalizing my behavior, Kevin grumbling about respect, Oliver and Haley nursing their bruised egos. None of it touched me. Then, on a Wednesday morning, the silence cracked. Unknown number. I stared at the screen. I knew that voice before he spoke. Logan, I didn't respond. I want you to come back. Blunt, as always. The way he said it, like it was a logistical solution to a minor issue, as if emotional damage had a reverse button. You don't get to walk away from family like this, he added, almost annoyed. I let out a breath through my nose. Not a laugh, just quiet disbelief. You calling this family is the real joke, I said. Silence on the other end. You used me when it was convenient, sidelined me when I didn't perform, then called me selfish when I left. I don't think you understand what family means, Dad. Logan, you're being dramatic. There it was. That tone, the one that turned fire into ice. That made pain feel like exaggeration. I ended the call mid-sentence. No goodbye. No grand finale, just a clean break. I blocked the number, deleted the log, and stood still for a moment. Nothing in my chest twisted. No what-ifs, no guilt, only clarity. It's been 3 months since that rooftop night. I haven't spoken to anyone in that family since. Not once. Not even when Oliver got featured in some magazine, or when Haley posted a filtered essay about healing from toxic people. I don't check their socials. I don't wonder what they're saying. They're ghosts with working cell plans. And me? I'm doing just fine. I signed 2 new contracts, moved into a bigger space, took a solo trip overseas, my first real vacation in years. I met people who see me, really see me, for who I am, not who I failed to become. Some nights, I think back to that party, to that stupid little name tag, Logan, the disappointment. If I had kept it, I'd frame it on my wall. Not as a scar, but as proof that walking away wasn't weakness. It was the first real act of power I'd ever taken in that family. And the best part? I didn't scream. I didn't break down. I didn't need their approval. I took the mic, told the truth, and walked out with my head high. That's what freedom tastes like. Not forgiveness, not revenge, peace. Story 2. If someone had told me 5 years ago that my own family would cut me off for getting an MBA, I probably would have laughed it off. But here I am, 31 years old, rewriting my life from the ruins they left me in. Let's rewind. My name is Rachel, and I was born into a family that treated favoritism like a religion. I grew up in a suburb just outside of Minneapolis, where my parents ran a modest Italian bistro that had been in the family for 2 generations. I was the quiet one, the tech nerd, the girl who wore hoodies to family dinners and got lost in lines of code, while everyone else was gushing over the golden child. My older sister, Melissa. Melissa was everything I wasn't, at least according to my parents. She was charismatic, glamorous, and always had a crowd of admirers at her heels. She practically glided through life, valedictorian, homecoming queen, business school graduate. My parents funded every inch of her academic journey. Tuition, luxury apartment, even a spring break trip to Barcelona for networking, they claimed. Meanwhile, I worked part-time as a barista and juggled freelance coding gigs to fund my computer science degree. I graduated magna cum laude. No party, no cake. Just a half-hearted good job, sweetie, from my mom, followed immediately by did you see Melissa's keynote speech on the restaurant's Instagram page? Over the years, I built a decent career in tech. I worked my way up to managing digital transformation projects for a mid-sized firm. It paid well enough, and I learned a ton, but I knew I needed something more. I wanted to move up, executive roles, maybe even start my own company someday. An MBA seemed like the right move, so I applied to a top-tier business school. The catch? The tuition. We're talking 6 figures. Still, I thought, naively, that maybe, just maybe, my parents would help out. I wasn't asking for a handout. I asked them to co-sign a student loan. That dinner is seared into my brain. I remember the way my mom's fork clinked against her wine glass as I laid out my plan, school name, goals, how it aligned with my future. My dad didn't even let me finish before shutting me down. "We've already spent enough on college," he said. "Besides, your sister's degree was for the family business. What's yours for? Silicon Valley?" They wouldn't even co-sign. Not pay, just lend their names. I felt like I'd been slapped, not just by their refusal, but by the realization that in their eyes, Melissa's dreams were family dreams. Mine? A selfish indulgence. So I turned to the only person who'd ever treated me like I mattered, my Aunt Diane. Diane's my dad's older sister, a neurosurgeon with a sharp tongue and a soft heart. My dad always bristled around her, said she acted like she was better than the rest of us. But Diane never looked down on me. She encouraged my interests, celebrated my achievements, and always made me feel like I was enough. When I told her about the MBA situation, she didn't hesitate. "I'll cover it," she said. "No strings." "You deserve this," I cried, not just from gratitude, but from the quiet grief of realizing someone outside my parents believed in me more than they ever had. Diane asked that we keep it between us. She knew how my father would react. I agreed. For once, I was doing something for myself. No drama, no politics. Or so I thought. I never figured out how Melissa found out. Maybe she overheard me on the phone. Maybe she went through my email. She had a habit of snooping when she thought no one was watching. But somehow, she knew, and she couldn't stand it. A week before MBA orientation, I came home from work and everything, my clothes, my books, my laptop, was packed into cardboard boxes by the front door. The house felt hollow, like it had already forgotten me. Melissa was standing with her arms crossed, looking smug. My parents were sitting on the couch with somber expressions, like they were about to deliver bad news. They weren't actually sorry about. "What's this?" I asked, my voice cracking. My dad held up a folder and said, "Explain this." Inside were printouts of emails, supposedly between Aunt Diane and me, discussing trade secrets from the restaurant, recipes, supplier contracts, even financial documents. It looked like I'd sold out the family in exchange for tuition money. My heart dropped. The emails were fake, photoshopped, fabricated, complete fiction, but they were detailed enough to fool someone who already wanted to believe the worst. "I didn't write these," I said. "Melissa must have. She wouldn't do that." My mom cut in. "She's not capable of something so malicious." But apparently, I was. They called me a traitor, said I had no place in their house. My mother sobbed. My father told me I was no longer family. Melissa just watched, her eyes gleaming with quiet victory. I begged them to listen. I even tried to show them my real email threads, innocent conversations with Diane about tuition and class schedules. But it didn't matter. They had made up their minds. I left that night with a couple of boxes and my dignity in shreds. I called Aunt Diane from my car, barely able to speak through the tears. She told me to come over immediately. That night, I curled up on her couch and tried to understand what had just happened. My family, the people who were supposed to protect me, had turned me into a villain to prop up their favorite. Melissa had finally won whatever twisted competition she thought we were in. But at what cost? I should have been excited. I was days away from starting my MBA. Instead, I was emotionally gutted, sleeping in a borrowed guest room and questioning everything I thought I knew about love and loyalty. Diane, ever the realist, told me, "Sometimes family is just a genetic accident. Build your own from the people who see you." That stuck with me. Over the next few weeks, I poured myself into orientation, lectures, group projects, anything to keep my mind off the betrayal. My classmates were brilliant, driven, supportive. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged somewhere, but Melissa and my parents were never far from my thoughts. How could she do this to me? How could they believe her? Did they ever really love me? Those questions haunted me through every late-night study session and networking event. And yet, somehow, I kept going. I had no idea then that this betrayal would become the turning point, not just of my education, but of my life. Starting the MBA program was like walking into a new world with an open wound. Everyone around me seemed so polished, so confident, and here I was, sleep-deprived, heartbroken, and trying to hold it together. But something surprising happened. I adjusted. It wasn't overnight. I still had days where I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying that night, the boxes, the fake emails. My parents' eyes filled with disappointment, like I was some criminal. But with every class discussion, every group presentation, and every 2 a.m. coffee-fueled study session, I started feeling stronger. And Diane, she became more than just my lifeline. She became my family. Living with her was like breathing fresh air after years in a stuffy room. We'd have weekly dinners, just the two of us. She'd tell me stories from her residency days, and I'd update her on school drama or whatever weird business case study we were buried in. For the first time in forever, I didn't feel like an afterthought. I started crushing it at school. Top grades, leadership roles in student clubs, internship offers rolling in. It felt like all the energy I had wasted trying to earn my parents' approval had finally been redirected somewhere it could grow. And grow it did. I graduated top of my class 2 years later. The day of the ceremony, I stood in front of a mirror, wearing my cap and gown, and realized I had done it. Without them, completely and entirely on my own. Well, not totally alone. Diane was in the front row, beaming. I could see her wipe away a tear as I accepted my degree. I didn't cry. I just felt peace. After graduation, I got hired at one of the top consulting firms in the city. The kind of job that came with travel, a corner office eventually, and respect. The firm appreciated me. They didn't care about where I came from, only what I could do. And I showed them. Diane was proud. Every time I reached a new milestone, she'd raise a glass like I'd just landed on the moon. And for 3 years, I lived in that bubble, a good one. No contact from my parents. No texts from Melissa. Just me. Finally becoming the person I always knew I could be, without someone cutting me down to make room for my sister's spotlight. Then, out of nowhere, that piece cracked. It was a Saturday morning. I was in my apartment, still in pajamas, drinking coffee and sorting through laundry when I heard a knock. I opened the door and there she was, Melissa. For a second, I didn't recognize her. She looked drained. No designer coat, no salon-styled hair, none of the polish she always wore like armor, just jeans, a faded sweater, and dark circles under her eyes. "Hey," she said quietly, "can we talk?" I should have slammed the door. My heart wanted to, but my curiosity got the better of me. So I stepped aside and let her in. She sat stiffly on the couch, fidgeting with her sleeves like a kid waiting for detention. "I need your help," she said finally. I didn't say anything, just waited. She took a breath. "The restaurant is failing. Mom and Dad tried to expand too fast, took out massive loans. It didn't work. They're talking about bankruptcy." My stomach twisted. "They need a strategy," she added. "I know you've done turnarounds. You're good at that stuff now." She didn't say it, but I knew what she really meant. "You're successful now. Save us." There it was. The irony. The daughter they kicked out was suddenly their last hope. I leaned back in my chair. "Let me get this straight. You helped get me kicked out of the family, lied about me, watched me get thrown out like trash. And now you want me to save the business that I was never good enough to be part of?" She looked at the floor. "I was jealous, okay? I saw you doing well without them, without me, and I panicked." My jaw tightened. "Jealous enough to ruin my life? I didn't mean for it to go that far," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't think they'd actually believe it, but they did. And I didn't stop it. I wanted to yell, to demand answers, to ask why she hated me so much back then, but I didn't. I just let the silence hang. Finally, she looked up. "Please, just think about it. You're the only one who can help." She handed me a slip of paper with her number and left, and just like that, she was gone. That night, I sat on the balcony with a blanket and a glass of wine, staring at the skyline. I felt everything: rage, confusion, a hint of satisfaction, but also something I didn't expect: sadness. I wasn't sad for them. I was sad for what could have been. For a long time, all I wanted was to prove myself, to show them that I was worth loving. But now that I had everything they said I'd never reach, I wasn't sure if it was worth dragging them along for the ride. The next day, I told Diane. She didn't say "I told you so." She just listened. "Do you want to help them?" she asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Part of me does, but I'm afraid if I open that door, they'll just hurt me me again. Diane nodded. Then whatever you decide, make sure it's for you, not for their approval, not out of guilt, only if it brings you peace. I've thought about that every day since, and that's where I am now, sitting with a choice. Do I walk back into the fire, or do I let it burn down without me? The paper Melissa left sat on my kitchen counter for days. I didn't touch it, just walked by it every morning, every night, like it was some kind of ghost watching me. I kept replaying her visit in my mind, that hollow look in her eyes, the way her voice cracked when she said please. It didn't feel like manipulation. Not this time. She wasn't wearing that smug mask she always had when we were younger. No eye rolls, no subtle digs, just exhaustion, defeat. Still, I wasn't ready to jump back in. Instead, I threw myself into work, meetings, strategy calls, client proposals. I even volunteered to lead a new internal project, anything to keep me busy. But the distraction only lasted so long. A week after Melissa's visit, life threw another curveball. I was in a client meeting when my assistant buzzed me. Rachel, there are 2 people in the lobby asking to see you. They say they're your parents. My heart stopped. I asked her to repeat it. She did, calmly, like she wasn't dropping a bomb on my day. I don't know what I expected walking into that lobby, but it wasn't what I saw. My parents looked like shadows of themselves. My dad's shoulders, always square and proud, were slumped. His face, once flushed with ego, had gone pale. Mom's silver hair was pulled back in a messy knot, eyes red, like she hadn't slept in days. We locked eyes for a moment. No one spoke. Finally, Dad broke the silence. We need to talk. I didn't want to have that conversation in the place where I rebuilt my life, so I took them to a quiet coffee shop across the street. We sat in silence for a bit. 3 people, bound by blood but sitting like strangers. Mom was the first to speak. We were wrong. Her voice trembled. We never should have turned our backs on you. We didn't listen, and we're sorry. I blinked. It was the apology I'd wanted for years, but it didn't land like I thought it would. It didn't bring relief, just emptiness, like someone handing you a gift after forgetting your birthday for a decade. Dad leaned forward. The business is worse than Melissa let on. The expansion failed. We're deep in debt. And now, legal trouble. He hesitated before going on. There were shortcuts, he admitted. We cut corners with health inspections, reported lower income, tried to dodge taxes. It was stupid. We thought we could fix it before anyone noticed. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Not just the illegal stuff, but the fact that he was admitting it. My father, who never apologized for anything, was now practically begging. What do you want from me? I asked flatly. We need help, he said. Legal advice, crisis planning, anything. You know this world now. You've done turnarounds. You've saved companies. He didn't say the next part, but I felt it save us, too. I sat back, arms crossed. So let me get this straight. You threw me out of the house, believed a fake scandal without even asking for my side, cut me off completely for 3 years. And now, when everything falls apart, you want me to fix it? Neither of them said a word. I worked my ass off to get here, I said. With no help, I started over. Do you understand what that's like? To be exiled from your own family over a lie. Mom's eyes welled up. We didn't know what to believe. Melissa lied, I snapped. And you believed her without hesitation. You never questioned it. You never even called me after. I could feel my voice rising, but I didn't stop. I'd waited too long to be quiet now. And now, you want to pretend that didn't happen? You want me to walk back into that mess like nothing happened? We're desperate, Dad said, his voice small. I didn't respond. I just stood up. Thanks for the coffee, I said. But I think we're done here. As I walked out, I could feel their eyes on me. But I didn't look back. I thought that would be the end of it. But it wasn't. A few days later, Melissa called. Again. I let it go to voicemail. She called 3 more times. The 4th time, I picked up. What? I said. I know they came to your office, she said. They told me. And I'm sorry, again, for all of it. Her voice cracked, and I could hear the strain. You don't have to help. I needed to say it. I've been carrying that guilt for 3 years. I thought I won, but I didn't. I lost a sister. I lost you. I didn't say anything for a while. Then, do you regret it because of what happened, or because you actually hurt me? There was a pause. Both, she said. I was jealous, but I didn't want to destroy you, and I hate that I did. Her honesty caught me off guard. Maybe for the first time, she wasn't hiding behind anything. I don't know what you expect from me, I said. but I can't forget what happened just because you say sorry. I know, she replied quietly. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to hear it from me, not from them. I ended the call feeling more confused than ever. I called Diane that night. I don't know what to do, I told her. They're spiraling, and part of me wants to watch it happen, but another part doesn't. Diane poured us each a glass of wine and looked me dead in the eye. You've already done the hardest part, she said. You survived them. Now you get to choose what comes next. But remember this, whatever decision you make, it better serve you. Not your guilt, not their regret, just you. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how far I'd come, the freedom I had now, the peace, but also the fact that this might be my only chance to reclaim power over the narrative they wrote me out of. Help them, and I risk reopening wounds. Don't help, and I get to stay safe, but maybe wonder for the rest of my life whether I missed an opportunity to be the bigger person. The thing is, this isn't just about them anymore. This is about me. What kind of woman I want to be, what kind of legacy I want to leave, and whether or not I can rise above the ashes without getting burned again. A few mornings after that last call with Melissa, the first stood barefoot in my kitchen, fingers wrapped around a mug of tea, watching the sun creep over the skyline. Something had shifted inside me, not in some dramatic movie scene kind of way, just a quiet click, like a door unlocking. I didn't want to carry bitterness anymore. That didn't mean I was ready to forgive or forget, but I was done dragging around a suitcase full of anger with someone else's name on the tag. So I made a decision. I wouldn't help them rebuild, but I would help them be honest. It started with a letter, old school, handwritten, addressed to my parents and copied to Melissa. No dramatic monologues, no guilt trips, just clarity. I wrote, I will not be stepping in to clean up the mess that was built by arrogance, favoritism, and years of silence. You made decisions that hurt me deeply. You chose to believe a lie because it was more convenient than facing your bias. But I am not your villain. That said, if you're truly interested in repairing something, start with the truth. Admit what happened to yourselves, to the people you hurt, maybe even to the community you served all those years. Because you didn't just betray me, you betrayed your own values, your own reputation. You wanted me to be the fixer, but what you need is to be accountable. I wish you peace. Rachel, I sent it through certified mail, no return address. I didn't want to reply. 2 weeks passed, then 3, no calls, no letters, just quiet. Then one morning, Diane called me into the living room. You need to see this, she said, passing me her iPad. It was a local news article. Headline, family-owned restaurant shuts down amid legal troubles. Owner issues public statement. My breath caught. I read every word. My dad had given an interview, admitted to tax errors, overspending, mismanagement. Even mentioned that in hindsight, we mistreated a family member who deserved better. He didn't say my name, but he didn't have to. The next day, I got a message request on LinkedIn. From Melissa, I know you probably don't want to hear from me again, but thank you. You didn't save the restaurant, but you saved the truth, and that matters. That was the last message I got from her. And honestly, that's enough. Life moved on. A few months later, I got promoted. Senior consultant, bigger clients, more responsibility. The kind of job where people actually stop talking when you walk into a room, not out of fear, but out of respect. And outside of work, Diane and I planned a trip, just the two of us. Glacier National Park, no laptops, no cell service, just mountains, sky, and the kind of silence that heals, not haunts. One night while we were hiking back from the ridge, Diane said something that stuck with me. You didn't just survive them, Rachel. You outgrew them, and you never shrank yourself to do it. I didn't respond. I just smiled, because she was right. For a long time, I thought proving myself meant stepping back into that family circle and being accepted. But I've learned something else. Sometimes walking away is the proof. Sometimes saying no is the closure. And sometimes you build your own circle with people who don't measure your worth against someone else's success. Now, when I look in the mirror, I don't see the forgotten daughter. I see a woman who rose up when no one clapped, who found her strength in silence, who never burned bridges but also didn't chase people who lit the matches. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not waiting for an apology, and I'm not interested in proving anything. I have nothing to prove to people who never saw me, but I see myself now, clear, whole, steady. My name is Rachel, and that name, my story, is no longer up for debate. This is who I am, and this is where I begin.